Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. We're excited to get to meet maybe the better half of one of our former guests, as Corey alluded to in his intro. But you're having a good afternoon.
Yes. I'm having a great day in central Nebraska. So I just break away from a little bit of work and visit with you guys for a while.
Have you been getting the rains the last couple of days, couple of weeks that we've been getting?
We have, we've received 2 rains in the last week, about 1.5 inches. And prior to that, it was about 90 days without any rain. So we were dry, and we had a perfect spring, perfect summer. And then right around the first week of August, it just stopped, and we didn't get anything till last week. So very thankful for that. It was kind of a miserable fall, weaning calves and trailing cows. And it was nasty. It was dirty, but we're good now.
Luke, in my intro, I did a high level of who you are, what you do. Give us a background of where you came from, what your farm looks like now.
Sure. So Ord, Nebraska is a town in north central Nebraska, community of about 2,000 people. I was born and raised here. Both my parents are here, my grandparents are here, et cetera, et cetera. And I always was involved with agriculture, but never really had an operation that was my parents, my uncles or my grandpa, et cetera. I'd work on those places. And I went to University of Nebraska at Lincoln and studied animal science, and then wasn't ready to grow up yet. I didn't know what to do. So I did graduate work there as well in ruminant nutrition. And I just thought I would work probably in the industry, either, pharmaceuticals or nutritionist or something to that effect, because there wasn't an operation for me to return to. Kind of at the end of graduate school, there was a couple different opportunities with some neighbors that were exiting the cattle business, and there was land for lease, and there were some cows for lease. And it's kind of like, well, I guess now is as good a time as any to take a shot. I'm not married. I'm 25 years old. What? If you're not going to do it now, we're not going to do it. So I decided to return back to my community, and my parents just had a little bit of land, and that was kind of my headquarters. And I started leasing ground, and I got really diversified. I background calves. I did heifer development. I did custom AI work. I was an independent contractor for Gen X. I also sold some distillers grains, just did a lot of different things to kind of cash flow. And that was, I guess, the start of Kovarik Cattle Company. So
essentially first generation.
Yeah. Consider it first generation. Yep. With 5 generations of agricultural roots, but this operation was non-existent before 2009. Yep.
So you've said that you've done quite a few things, but what have you settled on? Like, what's the core now?
Well, the core has always been commercial cow-calf production. And in 2015, I bought my first registered Angus cows, and that portion of the operation has been growing, and we hosted our first live bull sale with an auctioneer and ringmen and the whole works last year. So we'll be hosting our second this year in January. So as the registered operation has grown, I'm contemplating of kind of decreasing the commercial cow-calf portion. And, some of those other businesses that I did, like custom backgrounding or heifer development at my place, those, as we've grown, those have kind of sifted away as well. So it's a cow-calf ranch, and we're kind of fluctuating between more registered animals and more commercial animals.
So are you now selling breeding stock more than commercial?
No, nope. We'll only sell like probably 45 bulls this year and maybe 70 bulls next year and 100 the next year after that. But we can run around 1,000 cows on the ranch. So even more than that if we don't run any stockers. So we're still predominantly, commercial cow-calf. But like I said, I'd like to transition that
I was having a conversation with a farmer the other day, and he said, Jace, I feel like my operation is held together with duct tape. Now, I had to kind of laugh at this, but the reason I was laughing is because how much truth was in that statement. There are so many family farm operations today that are literally holding their operation together with duct tape, whether it's finances, whether it's operations, or things like that. Now, the reason that we use duct tape is because whatever we're using, we're trying to get the most amount of productivity out of it because we know deep down someday it's going to break. And this is the hard reality for a majority of family farm operations in this country is they know things are broken or not working, and they continue to use duct tape to just try to keep things together for a little bit longer. But eventually that road is going to come to an end. And this is the problem that we solve inside a legacy farmer and have over the past 5 years working with hundreds of family farm operations across the country. We have helped them take their operation from a place of chaos and disorganization to a place of confidence and clarity so they no longer feel like, hey, things are just held together with duct tape. So if you want to learn more about that proven process and what we built out working with hundreds of family farm operations over the past 5 years, go to legacyfarmer.com and sign up for a free call with our team today.
Well, do you need an auctioneer for January?
I got one. He's actually from, I think, Illinois maybe. But anyway, he's from one of the I states to the east.
I'm going to say if it's
drive right by you.
Might be Al Conover. He's one of the names that have been out there for a lot. So
yeah, it's Louderman is my guy. And I really, really like him. He's a good guy, and he was gracious enough to take, first sale, 37 bulls, and he's the world champion, and he comes over here and does it for me. So I guess he is looking for the future as well. So
that's cool. So all those decisions that you've made, sifting some stuff off, getting heavier in others, is that all profit driven or labor driven? What's driving those decisions?
So all of the above, plus fundamentally what I really enjoy. So, I mean, a successful seed stock operation is probably the most profitable cattle operation you can have, and it's the one I enjoy the most. Some of those other operations like a custom backgrounding or heifer development was just strictly cash flow. And I did not, have an operation, didn't have any grandparents or parents to kind of pull from or to help. And so as I was growing my cow herd, I had to cash flow, and everybody knows, the ups and downs of agriculture. So doing custom work like that was a steady. It was something I could count on, to make the fixed costs, make those payments. So it was a huge part of what I had to do while I was building equity to get to, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, normal cow-calf production system that a lot of people just have. So
now, is it your favorite part because you enjoy it the most because it also pays the most?
No, I just love cows, mama cows, and the genetics, and so just the process of picking the matings and actually doing the work of AI and the embryo transfer. And then, it's like Christmas when they start calving. I just get so excited, which cow's going to have this calf or this calf. And then just to watch them grow and develop, I just, I don't know, I just love it. And and then, I'm kind of an extrovert. So just staying at home and putting your head down and working all day, every day. And then, going in the house is not my cup of tea. So with the seed stock enterprise, I get to kind of intertwine being with people, connecting with people, and cattle genetics and ranching. So it feels like a perfect fit for me. So that's a very hard, business to kind of break into. I mean, there's operations that have been out there for 100 years and sell 500, 800 bulls. And I didn't even have cows 20 years ago. To kind of put your sign up and say, hey, we have bulls for sale too. That's it's not that easy, not that easy of a thing to do, but I like it. So we're doing it.
How have you navigated that to get your name out there, not having that long history like some of these people? What's been your success?
So 2 things. The first would be locally. I was a Gen X rep, so we did a lot of artificial insemination work, custom work for people. So I've worked with a lot of my neighbors or people, in a 50-mile radius of here with genetics already and choosing heifer bulls and AI in their cattle. So I already had a relationship with them. And I have really, really good friends, and they have cows. And so they've been pretty loyal to me as well. When I had one bull or two bulls for sale, those guys would come buy them from me, and then 10 and on and on. And then Natalie and just her ability to get us out there, to get me out there. It's kind of against my nature to go on a podcast or to put things on social media. But she's been able.
You're an extrovert.
Yeah, I know, but like in a small community, I don't want to do this. No, I'm joking. But I'm not one to write up a big story about myself and put it online. So she's gotten us a lot of attention, a lot of exposure, and then I then I get on a phone call with the guy, and then we can relate about things, and then he's not not a stranger anymore, and so kind of gets into the community thing. So I would say those two, and it takes both of those to have a successful seed stock operation.
For the cattle people that are listening, do you have a certain EPD that your herd is going towards, milk score, rate of gain, birthing weight, 205-day weight, something like that? Do you have something that's your niche?
No. I hate single selection for traits. So we really focus on cattle that do a lot of things well. And we live in north central Nebraska, so our cows are range cows. So our first focus would be structure, the cow udder, feet, legs, disposition, and then the ability to just be easy fleshing so they can be a range cow. We graze corn stalks in the winter. We graze grass in the summer. We don't feed cows very much. So a lot of traits that really aren't measurable on EPDs, or there is some EPDs. I don't know how accurate they are. So a lot of what I like to call is just like good cowman traits that you visually look at and select for. Not that I don't consider marbling or I don't consider growth or some of those more easily measured traits that everybody focuses on, because they are important. But I just feel like so many cattle are bred on a spreadsheet, or taking this cow and this bull and putting them together and seeing what kind of EPD profile they can get. And we're losing some function. And you guys would probably have the same thing with corn genetics. I mean, I'm sure there's hybrids, there's varieties that, are wonderful in a test plot. And then if you got a quarter of it, it's not the best, it's not the best field. So it's the same thing in cattle.
Are you guys sexing?
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you guys sexing semen?
Not really. A couple instances I have done it when we're doing embryo work, and I really just want heifer calves. I just want females.
Replacement. Yep.
Correct. I mean, we're still growing, so I need bulls to sell, and I want to grow the cow herd. So whatever I get, out of that progeny, I'm happy with. So
fair enough.
We've used the word growing a lot. And I think our listeners have some of the same desire, because we've got listeners of all ages and all types. But the most frequent email we get or text message that we get is, how would you grow if you were in my situation? How do people do really well and grow this? And how do they go? So from a cattle perspective, I don't think we've answered that question yet, especially not from a cow-calf operation. So if you had somebody that was young, and maybe they're running a couple of cows now, what advice do you have on what growth could or should look like?
So, I mean, two things to... One, you definitely need to be aware you're at in the cattle cycle. There's times to grow in cows, and there's times not to grow in cows. And I have done it correctly, and I have done it incorrectly. And so, right now, I don't think would be a great time to expand in the cattle industry, because cow-calf industry, because cow numbers are low and cows are at all-time high, and it's 8% interest. So it's going to be really hard to grow right now. So you need to kind of pick and choose your times. And then, with not having any equity, when I started, I leased everything. I leased cow herds and I leased the ranches. So I've done that with probably 4 gentlemen who were, getting older in age. They didn't want to sell their cows or couldn't because of tax purposes, but didn't want to operate them anymore. So as a young guy, I could offer, well, I'll lease your cows. I don't have the ability to borrow that much money to purchase those cows. I'll lease your ranch. don't have the equity to buy your ranch. And so I would lease both of those things from that person, and then was able to, kind of get a herd going, get some cash flow going, and start making some money by just leasing that capital.
Let me expand on that for some of our listeners. When you say lease, when we think row crops, we think, $200 per acre or something like that. I know when my wife's done some cattle, it's $1 a head a day, and she'll background them or something like that. Do you have a formula for young listeners that, not a price per se, but a formula? Is it per head per day? What about death loss? Is it, can expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So yeah, we did have a formula that we used, and I think I can get through it pretty well. So the first part of it is basically this rancher has an asset. So if that asset is worth $1,000 and he wants 5% return on his money, that's $50 that he's generating the value of that asset. And then the next component of it is, so that would be cow value. So if a cow's worth $2,000, and he wants 7% on his money, that's $140, or whatever current interest rate is, or whatever the stock market's doing, and whatever cow value is, that is the payment for his asset. And then the next two components of it basically take care of cow depreciation. So he has to be able to maintain his cow herd without losing it by leasing it to me. So we would take the average value of a cow, let's say it was $2,000, and the cull value of a cow at $1,000. There would be $1,000 difference between the average value of a cow and the cull value of a cow. And if we would assume a cow lasted 5 years, so we would depreciate that $1,000 over 5 years. So that would be $200 per year per cow in depreciation. So that's the portion of that payment. And then we had $140 was our return at 7% on a $2,000 cow. So now you're at $340. And then we would do a death loss. So we'd figure in a 2% death loss, or a 1% death loss. And so then that would be, about whatever the 1% of $2,000 would be, $20 would be the death loss. So that would be the lease agreement. So that was a cash agreement that we did every year, and it would fluctuate based on cow value and cull value of cows and the value of money.
Like it.
It's like a flex lease.
It did sound a lot like a flex lease.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it worked well because it was just very, very, clean and simple. If I had a really good calving year or prices went up, it didn't matter. We weren't on a shares. Or if I had a poor, if we had poor calving season or poor weather and there was less calves, it didn't affect the owner. He knew exactly what he was getting, and we just used that formula to figure out the value. So,
what resources did you use to come up with that? Is there universities that's
helping? somewhere I saw that. I think maybe just Googled cow leases, and
he probably heard it through the Farm for Profit podcast, even though he doesn't listen to podcasts.
Well, let me expand on Tanner's question. You talk about starting for the young guys starting. I see a lot of people, my family's in the show world, and so they really focus on, they start showing their FFA, they want to get into cattle, and so they keep going that way, and they want to buy more genetics, so they'll take a Gen X bull and they'll breed it with this heifer and look for calving ease, but it seems to be different than a commercial herd in my world, that we used to look for the longer, deeper body cattle with frame scores that were, nice and calving ease. And now they seem short and squatty and showy with more hair and put a little mane in there and, something like that. Do you recommend, and sorry for the long question, guys, trying to shorten here.
I was getting ready to say, we just talked about this.
Do you recommend, is the question, going into the show world if you want to start a cattle herd?
I think it's going to really depend on what you're good at. Like I'm not a great showman. I showed Forage, but I'm not a great showman. There's people that are going to outmarket me if I tried to raise show cattle. So no, for me, with my talents and what I love, I absolutely wouldn't do it. If you're in the eastern part of the United States and you need to create more dollars per head because there's just not as much grass, you can't run as many cows, there's not big herds, then something like show cattle where you can get more dollars per head would probably be a better fit. So just really, what options you have in front of you and what your talents are.
So you gave us a couple of things that you would suggest our listeners looking into, as far as, maybe now's not the right time, but if you did look at maybe going on a lease type opportunity.
And I don't think it's a bad time to lease cows. Yep. I just have a hard time buying cows right now. I mean, if you look at a $3,000 bred heifer at 8% interest, that's $240, just an interest a year, and $1,000 to run, or there's another 80. You're $320 a year in interest in a calf, just in interest. That's not a principal payment. Doing the work, it's just for 5 years. I think it's a hard time to buy cows or buy a bunch of cows.
Which makes sense. But now, what did you do that you'd recommend nobody does if they're trying to get started?
So in 2015, the cattle market was similar to this. It was really high, and a neighbor retired, and there was the option for me to run 180. There was an option for me to run 180 pairs. So I went and bought 180 cows at $3,000 a cow, and they're not quite paid off yet. It just stifled me. So what I went to when land comes available and we're at this point in the cattle cycle is something I can, like a yearling or a stalker, something I can buy, I can hedge. It's only going to be a 6-month, 8-month risk with an option underneath it. So there's not a huge risk. And then I'm basically tying that land up. I'm gathering that land, keeping it until we get to the point in the cattle cycle when I want to add cows. And so then I'll add cows and then still have that land. So that's what I learned that I did wrong the first time.
Gotcha.
So one of the original comments he made was diversification.
Right.
That was the first thing I wrote down.
Yep. So you're running rangeland. You're in north central Nebraska. So you guys get cold. They're not on pasture year round or not eating grass year round. Are you growing the forage and the feed as well, or you got to buy that?
So we there's still a lot of corn farming somewhat close to us, and then the Platte Valley of Nebraska is only about 80 miles south. So we ship our cows to corn stalks. So they graze corn residue from, say, November 1st or October 15th until mid-March. And we have our calving date set up for our cows start calving about May 10th. And so we're able to graze corn stalk residue until, like I said, until about the first or second week of March. And then we usually leave a little bit of grass at home so we try to feed the cows only about 20, 30 days a year. Okay. And then, so I do buy some hay. We have one small pivot of alfalfa I have my neighbor put up. But that's our own hay that we feed. So, and we wean our calves in October, late October, when the cows go to corn stalks, and then we winter the calves here, and then they sell the first week of March.
What's a lease on corn stalks for grazing? We've had that question come up several times.
I mean, some of it's by the acre. It's $25 an acre in my area, and they have the water and the fence and do all that. So if you can leave a cow on there for a cow an acre for a month, that's I don't know what it is, 80 cents or something a day. And then where I ship them to the Platte Valley, they do all the work. They take care of the cows. I go down there maybe once or twice a year, and I think that's $1 a day. And I don't have to go there if I don't want to. I just want to go see my cows, so I go check them out. But something to that effect. But this year hay is cheaper, but the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's cost $3 to $4 a day to feed a cow, and if I can graze her for $1, well, it's pretty easy math,
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I just like your perspective for those young guys in the cattle industry and putting things together. And a lot of our young guys like to use technology. How's that evolved in the world of cattle? Is there new programs to run, new ways of tracking business?
So on the seed stock side of it, genomics have become extremely powerful, and I use them. Some people, refuse to use them or won't use them, but I just want to know the information. I'm not looking for that outlier. I'm not looking for that 1%, but I'm looking for cattle that do a lot of things really well. So the power of, and I feel like they're accurate. I mean, I've used genomics and I almost don't believe it. And then as you watch that animal, oh yeah, they were right. You know, they got it. So I think that's a huge tool. I pretty much outsource. I have a great banker. We get together, do our cash flows. I have a great accountant, and those two guys kind of work together as my CFO, and we'll meet quarterly or every 6 months, and they'll tell me, how my capital expenditures is 200% higher than I said it was going to be, and all this and that. But so I just have a great team around me. I don't really do much of it myself. I'm not an office guy. I'm not sitting in here looking at that. It's more kind of, math on the top of my head, just kind of like we're visiting. And that's kind of how I do all my projections and businesses, I guess.
How do you like using performance livestock analytics?
That is wonderful. When we were backgrounding and feeding a lot of cattle, the accuracy that it brings when you're loading feed and when you're feeding other people's cattle, compared to writing it down on a scratch pad or a 5-star folder. We were giving away so much feed, and not intentionally, but there's just so much shrink, or you overfeed this a little bit or overfeed that a little bit. And it was impossible, or nearly impossible, to record all that and then transfer all that accurately to a spreadsheet and then get it billed to the customer. And with performance beef, it's a touch of a button and it records everything, and it's all linked to your scales. Also, once a couple different employees get used to it, if one person's gone or this or that, you don't have to communicate. It's all on performance beef. Anybody can access it from their phone, and it just made their record keeping an absolute breeze from that perspective. We only feed our own calves now, and I'm still a subscriber to performance beef, and it's only a couple of days a week, but it is so convenient that I could not imagine not using it.
Didn't you go to school with him, Corey? With Dusty? Or Dustin?
I think he was friends with people that I went to school with.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting because every time we talk to a cattle producer or we get a listener that writes into us, it seems like they always want to know how it works for somebody else. They're in the dairy. Obviously, we understand the dairy metrics, and they're like, well, how do I expand my operation to start finishing beef cattle? And then same thing, you got a feed yard that wants us to do an episode on what it's like to background cattle. It seems like in each industry of the cattle world, everybody thinks there's more to be made in another part of the chain.
Even we interviewed the one gal from Nebraska that made her own label.
Oh yeah,
and sell the beef.
EnviroSmart
beef, and all of a sudden she's selling beef, and it's more selling by the pound still. But
yeah, I mean, I think there is, there's different sections of the cattle industry for a reason. It's not by accident that we just have a feed yard and we have stocker guys and we have cow-calf guys. I think it's really hard to be good at all 3 phases or 4 phases of it. And, what makes a good cow ranch doesn't necessarily make a good stocker ranch, and probably not a good area to feed. So, I don't know. We, for a little while, we tried to market our own beef, and we did well, but we had some things against us. We live in central Nebraska, so it was 3 hours to Omaha or Lincoln, which is the only places that would buy beef. No one next door is going to buy beef. They already have their own beef. Yeah. And then it's really expensive to ship. So it's heavy. You got to keep it cold. You got to ship it fast. So I mean, if you want to run a freezer truck, 3 hours in one direction and deliver door to door, that's how you want to live your life. It's probably fine, but it was not what I wanted to do every day.
We did an interview with the Legacy Beef Cooperative. I don't know if they've been out your direction yet as far as they've reached. It's supposed to be Council Bluffs area.
Yeah.
So maybe a little outside of your range, but it's a farmer-owned, it's a rancher-owned cooperative. They're trying to compete, but not only do you get paid for the fat cattle that walk across the scale and get slaughtered, you also get a percentage of the cut when box beef is doing well. So a unique way to try and...
Right, and that makes sense, too, because you're not going it alone, right? I mean, you got a cooperative. So you got cattle that can be fed at different times of the year, and to fill that. And I mean, just the inventory management was extremely difficult because, you have steaks now and you don't have steaks. Of course, you got a bunch of hamburger and roasts left. What do you do with those? And then when are our next cattle ready? And the holidays were always great. And then March, it was just like, no one's doing anything.
Have you looked at, we had the opportunity to interview 10X or 10 Corp rather. And 10 Corp was more feedlot cattle under roof.
Yep.
Have you looked at anything like that? Recapture the manure, recapture the usage of that?
Yeah. So, my initial thoughts on that is more from a cattle standpoint, and it's just cattle performance. And I think if you're where I am or anywhere to the east of me and you have greater amounts of precipitation, I think it's a great idea. Because if you don't have, a good pen environment, your performance is going to suffer. Then the DEQs, they're going to love those kind of systems from a manure management standpoint, and being able to use that. The overhead expense of that, if you're in western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, or up and down the panhandle of Texas, just the overhead of that, I think it would be hard to justify it in some of those areas. So once again, I think it really is dependent upon your situation.
Farmers protect what matters most with Sukup Manufacturing. Proudly family-owned and made right here in the USA, Sukup is your go-to innovator for grain bins, dryers, and other grain storage solutions designed to keep your hard work safe. Corey, how did your bin site run this fall?
Flawlessly. Our fall was fast and furious. We didn't have to dry any corn, so I didn't have to use my mixed flow dryer for drying. But I did use it to meter out grain into my air system because we don't have a leg. So that worked great. All the electronics worked great. The bins worked fantastic. The fans worked great. And we're getting ready to actually haul some out to core our bins and use our drag system from Sukup.
Hey, there you go. With Sukup's unmatched quality and support, you get peace of mind just like Corey to make sure your grain stays protected. Sukup leads the way with reliability and performance. Visit sukup.com today.
Well, we've talked cattle. We've all actually had your wife, Natalie, on the podcast before from the Discover Ag podcast. We've had her story about how you guys met. I want to hear your story.
Well, can I hear hers first?
No. Since you could have, if you listened to our podcast,
That's
you could have heard it.
There's an incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah, my fault. What do you want, the long version or do you want the short version?
However, let's hear it.
So, my commercial cow-calf business was based on adding value to the cow herd by creating Hereford Angus F1 replacement heifer calves. So that was the crux of that business. That's how I added value. And her family is Hereford breeders in Montana and have some of the best maternal Hereford cattle in the world, in my opinion, or that's just a fact, actually. It's really not an opinion. So I went out there to buy a Hereford bull. So my buddy and I fly out there in his Husky and little two-seater, all the way out to past Bozeman, Montana, and get there. And I find a bull I like, and there happens to be Natalie, who was single, and a little perplexing, of course, but interesting. But I was just like, whatever, I'm on a bull buying mission here first. So buy the bull, and after the sale, they have like a gathering, a party, a meal, music, drinks, whatever, hang out. And I didn't want to really like ask her for her number or, like be too forward. So I was just like, I'll just find her on social media and, I can, strike up a conversation or something there. And so that was my plan. Well, we leave to fly home the next day, and I cannot find her on social media anywhere. She's not on social media, which is crazy now, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just like, well, there goes that. So the next year, a year later, go back to the same bull sale again. My same buddy who's going with me, who was the best man, gave the speech at our wedding. And I was like, all right, I'm definitely going to get her number, And he just kind of sat me down and said, Luke, the odds that 28-year-old woman is still single in Bozeman, Montana after 12 months is just very unlikely. I just want you to be prepared that she's
Don't
probably
get your
going to have
hopes up.
she's probably going to have a boyfriend there when you get there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hadn't even ever thought of that. I
Not
was
ready
like,
for that.
Yeah, I would not be ready for that.
I've been waiting for her. She's got to be waiting for me.
Yeah, we were kind of dating in my mind, and
For a year.
for a year, I hadn't
I got a
talked.
girlfriend.
Long distance.
She's out in
Yeah. And so we get there, and she was still single. So that time I was very forward. I got her number, and we started talking, and I think that was in March, and I told her it's just getting ready to calved in March, then late March, and I told her I was just getting ready to calve, and I told her I might be able to see you like in July or August or something. I just said I don't think I'll have much time, and I think 2 weeks later we went on a date, and we were engaged in February, and we were married in like 16 months or 15 months. So, yep, it's been fun ever since.
Nice.
Yep.
I think that matches up.
I think it matches.
It was
Yeah.
pretty close.
With
I
her
thought there
short.
was something to do with him falling off a gate or something at the bull sale or one of those things. That
That
really
wouldn't surprise me. That happens to me often. I rolled my ankle dancing with her.
Oh.
Maybe I got weak ankles, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I don't
made
know.
you weak in the knees.
Yeah, probably something like that happened. I wouldn't doubt that.
So I know that one of the things that we've learned through Natalie is just the connection you guys have in the community, and not just like you said, your small town you like to be an extrovert in, but in the cattle world all around. Why is that important for a young guy looking to expand his herd or expand his footprint to build those relationships?
I mean, it's extremely important just for opportunities. So, currently I have 12 landlords. And most of those landlords have come from my first landlord or my second one, and a connection and a neighbor. And I want to get out. I guess Luke could just open the gate to this pasture. So being involved, knowing those people, treating those people well. I mean, we go to one guy's place and we do something this way, and that afternoon we'll go to the next guy's place and we'll do it completely the opposite. But that's how he wants to do it. And so just getting along with the landlords, and then just knowing people and creating opportunities. So if you're not involved in the community and you don't have your own resources, you gotta have somebody else's. You gotta be able to lease somebody else's resources, and if they don't know you, you're not gonna be able to do it.
Guys, my wife was telling me in the animal science program at Iowa State University that it's like 90% female. Do you think, Luke, that the cattle industry is going more female than male?
I mean, I guess I would say, if I just look back over the next, last 10 or 15 years, I would say there's definitely more females that have their own operation. But I haven't been on campus since 2009, so I can't say what University of Nebraska is like or any other place. But there's no reason why it wouldn't, so.
Did we skip over that? Did you go to college?
Yeah, he said.
Okay. I missed
Yeah.
it.
Lincoln.
That's
Lincoln. Yep. I did graduate work there in ruminant nutrition.
Yeah. And then he went for graduate, I was going to say.
No, way
Yeah.
to listen.
right. It's been a while.
I was having too much fun. I just couldn't go home yet. So
Yeah.
my professor, actually, Galen Erickson, he was my graduate school advisor. He's an Iowa guy and went to Iowa State. I think he got his PhD at Iowa State.
Nice.
And he has been a giant in Nebraska as far as a professor and a research scientist, and he's one of the staples to our university for sure.
That's what we call missionary work. We go Iowa guys go over to Nebraska and teach you how to grow
help
corn and cattle and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we try to help you out.
Right, we need it. We need it. Yeah.
That's definitely going to be a clip.
Yeah. What in your eyes is some of the biggest issues in the cattle industry right now?
I mean, interest, the cost to, especially for young guys, it's even more of a deal. But just the cost to operate, and then labor is number two. I think those two are, and I can't say to farming, but it just seems like farming is getting better and better. I mean, the tractors are Heck, I got a tractor now. It's got like air in the seat and independent suspension. Ranching's not any better. The horse still is the same as it was 200 years ago. So, finding the people that want to work with cattle and being able to keep them employment for them, I think is a big challenge as well. Those two things would be the headwinds I see.
And cattle price has been good this past just go here lately.
Yeah, the last even 3 years really has been very good. 2015 was great. In 16, it kind of collapsed and we were coming back, and then COVID hit and kind of shook everything up again. And then it's been strong, and it is good. And it's as profitable as it's been, or second as profitable as it's been while I've been operating. But there's just some costs there that are pretty sneaky, but they're really adding up. So. Like I said, it's good. It's nothing to complain about, but it's not, if you'd have told me 5 years ago what calves are bringing, I thought, geez, we're going to have it made, so, it's just not quite as good as it should be somehow, but
so what are you
I just feel like we really need to be careful here is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So what are you excited to try next? What are you going to start making changes or improvements?
I hope no more new systems. I'm kind of getting tired of all the changes and as diversified as I was. So I would like to kind of hone in on, just a couple of systems and grow those and kind of perfect those. So, we're going to sell 45 Angus bulls this year. I would like to grow that to 100 or 150 Angus bulls and have that kind of be the backbone of our operation.
Good. Well, I just got a couple rapid fire questions, unless you guys got a couple more.
Go for it.
Just some curious cattleman questions. What's your favorite cut of beef?
Ribeye.
Yeah. Still didn't get a tri-tip answer there.
Nope.
I'm excited. That's on the menu for the restaurant I get to go to tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have to get myself a tri-tip. What skill should every rancher have?
Boy, I don't know. I
Building fence.
Yeah, building fence, patience.
Patience.
I mean, I learned how to AI when I was 12 years old, and I have used that a lot. It's been a big part of our operation, and so for me, that was probably the most important skill I had. It allowed me to diversify. It allowed me to make off-farm income. However, and then we used it within our own operation. But I think that would just be dependent upon the person.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible mechanic. I wish I was a much better mechanic than I am, but that's why I don't do any farming.
Are you a chaps and spurs guy?
Oh, it just depends if it's cold out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if it's cold, I wear them. If I'm riding a horse, I try and wear spurs. Unless the horse doesn't need spurs. So, when we use a 4-wheeler, we use a side-by-side. We use whatever makes sense for that day. So I'm not really a tradition guy where I have to do, this and this way. It's just whatever's gonna work the best to get the job done is what we do. So.
And then my last one is, what do you do when you're not on the ranch?
I love fishing. We have a cabin in Canada that we go to, and so I spend time up there. Husker football, of course. I'm a Nebraska kid, so enjoy sports, and just being friends, family, and then probably fishing. But a lot of our vacations are centered around cattle sales or cattle trips or visiting customers or something to that effect. So my wife would say pretty much everything we do is cattle related.
All right. Well, that's good. That's what I've got. As far as that goes, I hope that we provided some value to our listeners. I learned a bunch of things about ways to scale a cattle operation or things to think about if we're looking to grow. Really appreciate you sharing that. Now, I know your wife would say, how should we look you up? How can we find you guys? She's going to want you to give that push.
Sure. So I don't know. We have a website, Kovarik Cattle Co, which is where all of our information is as far as contact info, and then our bull sale. Also, there's a Kovarik Cattle. I think Natalie has an Instagram with that, and then Luke Kovarik would be on Facebook as well. So anyway, you can reach out to me. I'd love to talk and visit about anything you want to visit about, really. So yeah, feel free to reach out and connect.
Cool. Well, that's all I got. You guys?
That's all I got. Thanks for coming on with us. As good. We learned a lot more about cattle than we thought.
Yeah, if you ever want to come visit, it's not that far.
I know we might have to do that. Put some more missionary work on our calendar.
Yeah.
Make some stops on the way. But no, I appreciate you, listeners. We also appreciate you tuning in. So until next time, have a good one.